Is it unsafe to be social on social media? I mean, you've seen my content, you've seen content of other people online where they say to you, if you want to win online, you need to be social on social media. But what is the cost of being social on social media?
Yeah. Yeah. Come let me teach you a lesson. Come let me teach you a lesson. Label line with the tweets. Follow me back to my nest. Label line with the podcast. Teach you lesson cause I got class. Label line with the impact. You be lying, that's a real fact. Come let me teach you a lesson. Come let me teach you a lesson. Label line with the tweets. Follow me back to my nest.
Hello, Lion Tribe. Welcome to the Lebu Lion Show, where we talk all things marketing, brand building, business mindset, and sometimes pop culture. I'm your host, Lebu Lion, and I'm so happy to be here to be talking about a topic that is highly contested right now on social media because it involves the security and the future of our jobs. And the question is, does social media or the use of social media jeopardize our jobs? Stay tuned if you're trying to build a career or a business or a brand in a tech-enabled world where the internet never forgets. Hi, Tribe. This is a kind reminder to ask you to like, share, subscribe, and do the things that you need to do to get this podcast to reach the right people. We want to grow this community and elevate it to greater heights, and we need your help to do this. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please click the link in our bio to subscribe so you can get all things marketing, brand building, and mindset in our weekly EIM newsletter. And don't forget to keep checking in our link when we have events and masterclasses. Enjoy the rest of the episode. So let's get into it. Is it unsafe to be social on social media? I mean, you've seen my content, you've seen content of other people online where they say to you, if you want to win online, you need to be social on social media. But what is the cost of being social on social media? If you're familiar with South African TikTok, you will probably be familiar with somebody called Dominic Zaga, who is a very well-known personality and TikTok creator in South Africa. Dominic is known for confronting bullying, but not only by responding to their comments or making videos to showcase how offensive and hurtful their statements are. Dominic takes it a couple of steps further and actually finds that person's identity and contacts the workplace so that the workplace can be aware of this person's behavior online. There are a couple of people online who are saying that this is wrong and he's actually causing unemployment. And there's some people who are saying bullying is wrong. And it shows you how you need to behave in the right way when you are on social media, but also when you're offline, that your character actually matters. And if you don't behave in a way that respects other people, you will suffer the consequences. And I've also engaged with certain people that I know who work in corporate spaces who feel a little bit skeptical and sometimes afraid of building their personal brands, for example, online, because they feel like it's an unsafe space where they'll get attacked or they'll have old files brought up about them once they start to succeed online. And so they wonder if it's really valuable for them to be on these platforms. To add insult to injury, people's leaders, their bosses, did not grow up in a tech-enabled world, so they don't see social media the way that we do as millennials and Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. They think social media is a playing tool, and they actually think it's a bit of a threat to the organization. So what should you do if you are somebody who understands that it's important to be online, to use technology, but you also don't want to jeopardize all the hard work that you've done in getting the job, in building a career, just because the internet doesn't forget? I think it's important for us to understand that the internet is an environment, it's a marketplace. It's not just an absurd space that exists outside of reality. It's very real. The handles that you see online are very real. Those are real people. Whether it's user 213 or it's Cherry Blossoms 51 or it's just somebody's real name. All of those people are real people who live in the real world offline. And they have careers, they have stories, they have family, they have relationships, they have full and complete lives. So when you're navigating the online space, navigate it as if it's offline. Navigate it as if you are passing people wherever you are and you're watching them do what they do and you get an opportunity to comment if you want to. How would you speak to them if it was that kind of scenario? Often people behave as if social media exists outside of reality. So whatever they do on social media has no bearing on real life, that there are no real life consequences for being on social media. And some people say, well, that's an infringement on my right to freedom of speech. But your freedom of speech does not entail bullying, harassing, or being mean to other people. And even if you had to think about it from a corporate perspective, if you had to spew vile insults, for example, to a colleague or something that's sexually inappropriate, you'd still find yourself in the HR department fighting for your life and fighting for your job. So you don't want to find yourself in those situations. You need to be first aware that social media is a marketplace. It is a real space with real people, and there are real consequences to how you behave online. You need to have a strategy of how you're going to show up online, especially if your job is tightly related to your online presence. So yes, there are some employers who think the online space is unsafe or they find it quite aggressive or quite scary. But when they see you achieving things that would align with corporate objectives, whether we are offline or online, they'll be much more open to allowing you to have a very fulfilling social media life and existence. So this looks like things like being intentional about which platforms you're using, Instead of using, let's say, a Facebook or a TikTok, maybe you'll use LinkedIn because that's more of a professional social media platform. Or you have a strategy that helps you decide what kind of content you're going to share on all of the social media platforms so that you always make sure that you're coming across as somebody who is a good person, who stands for the right values. And when I say right, I mean the kinds of values that will allow you to access opportunities and don't go against the law, so that fit within the confines of the law, and that also just allow you to be a safe human being for others. Create content that can allow you to navigate through spaces safely, right? So you have to be very intentional about the content you're creating, not just the platform you use, but the content you're creating. And in fact, I'd argue that the content you create is more important than the platform that you use. Because if you're more mindful about the content you're creating, you'll find that it can be applicable and appropriate for any platform because you'll still find the right market. Also, how are you showing up online? How do you look? How are you engaging with others? All of these things are also going to be a representation of the kind of person that you are. And even though your company doesn't necessarily have a right over whether you want to wear jeans and a top or a suit or whatever it is, if you are well known to be associated with the company, how you show up online is also going to affect the company's reputation. And so you want to be very careful about your positioning. How closely related are you to the company that you work for? Do people quickly or immediately recognize you when they see you outside of the workspace because you're doing such a great job, for example, where you work, that you're highly connected and associated with the organization? Or is your attachment and association to the organization a little bit further or a little bit wider than that kind of example that I gave you? You have to consider your positioning. And if your positioning is a closer one, you're going to have more eyes on you from the organization that you serve. And so you have to be more mindful of what you're posting. And we're not saying that you can only post educational content or content about your job. You can post about your hobbies or your family. Just keep it appropriate. Keep it something that you wouldn't mind your bosses showing on a slideshow, for example. It has to be stuff that you're okay being in the public eye. So don't show your fender benders with your friends at the club. Don't show yourself drinking too much and not being able to control yourself. Don't show yourself in compromising positions. This doesn't mean that you're being dishonest. It simply means that you understand how you need to show up online. Yes, we are all human beings and we have the right to express ourselves, but we need to be mindful of how we are expressing all the beautiful and unique things about us. And recently on TikTok, somebody asked me, will I still get into trouble at work if I post compromising content but I'm not wearing company uniform, for example? Because people were using examples about petrol attendants, the fly SA fare situation, how people, even though the lady who was a passenger wasn't wearing SABC uniform, they've discovered that she works for the SABC. So people were asking, is it safe for me to post what I want to post online if I'm not wearing a uniform, or does it not matter? And I said to them, listen, it's got nothing to do with the uniform. The internet has a lot of detectives. And if you go astray or you don't do something the right way, people are going to find your background. It's very easy to find out a person's identity online. It's very simple, and there are lots of people who know how to do this. So whether you like it or not, in some way, shape, or form, you will always be attached to the organization that you serve. And you need to walk around as if that is the case. And not only the organization that you're serving, but the future organizations that you want to work for. Because the internet doesn't forget. Once you start building your brand online, and when I say building your brand, I mean it in a very basic way. Once you start creating a profile online, even if there is no content but you want to exist and engage, you're already starting to communicate your brand online, and that is a digital footprint that you're creating and leaving for other people to find if you step out of line or you engage in some controversial situations that make them want to expose who you are. So be very careful about how you navigate the online space. I know that what I've said has seemed quite daunting, but please remember that social media in and of itself is a powerful tool. You need to be on it. And once you learn how to use it the right way, it is fun, it is educational, and so many opportunities come out of that. And before we finish this session, I want to see if the team has any questions or any statements they want to make about this concept of whether social media jeopardizes your job. Guys, do you have anything to say?
I think I have a question. I actually wrote it down. So the question is, should employees be held accountable for all social media posts, or does growth and change outweigh past mistakes?
Oh wow, should employees be held accountable for their behavior, their past behavior online? Look, I'm very hard on these things. I believe people should be held accountable. And I'm saying this because your character is your character. Tweets don't just come out of nowhere. Content doesn't just come out of nowhere. People are who they are, and people seldom change. So you might grow up and realize that what you were saying was wrong, but I really truly believe that at the core of a person, the worst that they show you tends to be a part of who they are, no matter how much they grow. And this is probably going to rub a lot of people up the wrong way, because I know in South Africa we have this culture of forgive and forget, right? But for me as a business owner, when I think about working with talent, I understand that people will posture once they understand that they have something to lose. But before they have something to lose, they tend to show you who they are, right? We've all been teenagers. A lot of us, if you're millennials or Gen Z or Gen Alpha, you had social media as a teenager. You've been living with social media. Most of us did not post offensive content. Most of us were not posting racial content. Most of us were not posting harmful content. Most of us knew how to exist on that space, be controversial, be young, but not be dangerous. So for me, the fact that somebody can display that at a young age has no bearing for me on their age. It's not about their age. It's not about them being young. It's their character. Because there were other people their same age who did not display the same thing. And in fact, when you look at it from a numbers perspective, there are more people who were doing the right thing than people who were not doing the right thing. So to me, it's a reflection of your character. If you can type that, you had the conviction to do it, I can't imagine what other foul things you might have in you. So for me, as somebody who works with a lot of talent, if I find any information about you, especially if it's like tweets or something that you typed yourself, I have to use that as part of the information that we collect about who you are. And I think maybe, if we want to be a more empathetic community. We could say that, in your job interview, for example, they could give you a chance by asking you what made you do that, so you can explain yourself, and maybe then we can see growth in how you explain why you did what you did. But this excuse of it was just somebody's age, or I don't know, at the time they didn't have money, they were poor, they were this, for me, that's not an excuse enough. The moment you open a social media account and you know how to type, you are responsible for how you behave, and it's up to you to show your character. We can all be mean, we can all be aggressive, we can all be dangerous, but most of us choose not to be. So why didn't you? That's my question every time I see things like that. So I even take it a step further, where I unfollow celebrities or people who have tweets that resurface that they made 10 years ago that are horrible. I unfollow. That's how deep I take it. Any other questions?
2 quick comments on the question.
Okay.
From earlier on, I think people need to be aware of the fact that in many employment contracts, there's a very innocuous line that says, it's very broad, and it can be construed in any way that the company wants to, and it says that you will not bring the name of the organization into disrepute. Mm-hmm. So I think that covers like the Fly Fair incident. You're not there on business, you're not wearing SABC regalia, but if people make that negative association, then according to that little clause, the company can disassociate themselves or take action against you. That's the first one. Mm-hmm. Second one is, I think people also need to be aware that in many recruitment processes now, a lot of recruiters are actually doing background checks on people, going online and actually literally checking what does this person actually like posting, about before they get hired, especially for your more executive or senior positions. Mm-hmm. And then my last one was just going to be a question. Right now in 2025, there's the mainstream social media platforms. So from Lebo Lion, what is the purpose of each of the platforms, do you think? Because some people might think that, no, if I want to be professional, I can't be seen on TikTok. Or if I really want to build a community, then YouTube is the place. How do you think people should categorize the different platforms in their heads?
I love that. And I love what Madiwa was saying about how each organization has a social media policy, right? And each organization has a clause where you cannot bring it into disrepute. So if you choose to do so, they can also take whatever action they believe fits the crime or fits the offense. And you need to be aware of that. These are not laws that I'm creating. It's not laws that anybody else created. These are organizational structures, processes, and systems. And they've been there for a very long time. It's just that now we have social media, and that's also been ingrained into it. So I love that. And Mudiwa's question about which social media platforms should you be using, or are there some that seem professional and some that don't? Look, I think content overrides platform. So if you've got content that is appropriate, that delivers the right message, that positions you in the right way, then you can put on any platform. I mean, look at somebody like Oprah. Her content is consistent across the board. It doesn't matter if you saw clips of her show on TikTok or if you saw them on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. It would be the same messaging of uplifting people, being motivational, being empathetic, showing people how to be better and to grow and to do good. So if your underlying messaging and the way you present yourself is consistent and it fits the criteria of what you're trying to achieve, the platform wouldn't matter. But if you're very scared and you don't want to go on all platforms, I'd say first choose LinkedIn. Not only because it's the biggest professional social media networking site in the world, but also because that's where you're going to be able to network and engage with people in your industry, other professionals. And so it kind of becomes this metronome and these guardrails that stop you from veering into the inappropriate, right? Because everybody on LinkedIn knows that they've got something to lose, they've got something to prove, and so they're on their best behavior. And you'll find that most of your engagements, if not all on LinkedIn, are going to be appropriate. But once you start finding yourself on other platforms like a TikTok or a Facebook, you might see yourself veering off into the land of the unknown and participating in conversations where maybe you're a little bit emotional and fired up, and you start to show parts of yourself that could jeopardize your job or jeopardize your career. So if you don't know how to navigate that yet, I'd say just stick to LinkedIn, because there are so many guardrails there that will keep you professional, whether you like it or not. You don't have to worry so much about how to navigate. But the other social medias are perfectly appropriate and they'll actually help you with relevance, but you need to know how to use them so that you don't lose your footing and start to behave in a way that doesn't showcase all the work that you've done. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I know this is a controversial conversation. I know a lot of people get very emotional when we talk about this, but this is the truth. We're living in a tech-enabled world. This means that you need to start thinking like tech is the other stakeholder in your life, in your business, in your brand. It's not just suppliers and investors and your customers, but it's also social media. Social media is a legitimate stakeholder in your business and your brand building activities. How are you managing and navigating social media to ensure that it contributes to your return on investment, to your brand building activities, and to the reputation of whatever you're building? Think about that. But you know how we do. Please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to share this podcast with everyone that you know. And until next time, remember, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. Hi, tribe. This is a kind reminder to ask you to like, share, subscribe, and do the things that you need to do to get this podcast to reach the right people. We want to grow this community and elevate it to greater heights, and we need your help to do this. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please click the link in our bio to subscribe so you can get all things marketing, brand building, and mindset in our weekly EIM newsletter. And don't forget to keep checking in our link when we have events and masterclasses. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Level line with the tweets, follow me back to my nest. Level line with the podcast, teach you lesson cause I got class. Level line with the impact, you be lying, that's a real fact. Come let me teach you a lesson.